Steven, this is Emily Proctor calling you.
Hi, Steven. It's Melissa Anderson calling.
Mr. Brittingham, this is Bill Duke. How are you, sir?
Steven, this is Patrick Duffy.
Welcome to Hollywood and Beyond with Steven Brittingham. Your home for meaningful and in-depth interviews. For more guest and show news, please visit the all-new website by going to hollywoodbeyond.net.
Hi, this is Carrie Mitchum. Welcome to Hollywood and Beyond podcast. You can contact host Steven Brittingham anytime by email. Send your thoughts or feedback to hollywoodandbeyondshow@gmail.com. Steven looks forward to hearing from you soon. And now, here's your host, Steven Brittingham.
You are just moments away from my conversation with actress, director, and screenwriter Victoria Vertuga, who is here to discuss her latest film project, Lexi. The story of the making of Lexi is very inspirational to me. My hope is that you, too, will walk away feeling inspired. Victoria was actually planning on working on another project entirely different than this one. And then came along the pandemic. And that, as you know, changed everything for just about all of us worldwide. Despite the restrictions of the pandemic, Victoria was determined to still be involved with artistic projects. And the results is her latest film, Lexi. What a wonderful reminder for all of us that even under the most difficult of circumstances, even as massive as the worldwide pandemic, we can still do wonderful things. Before our conversation begins, let me give you a sampling of what Lexi is all about.
Hey Lexicons, welcome back. Okay, so I know this is not what you come here for. You want to be inspired and motivated, and I want to continue to do that for you too. But right now, I need to talk to you, Lexicons. Someone is messing with me. Some of you may already know what I'm talking about. Last night, there was a video posted of me. Apparently, it was recorded by my webcam, but I did not post it. I mean, I'm clearly sleeping in the video. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, why would the webcam even turn on?
Motivational influencer Laughing Lexi has gone missing. As the tale unfolds, the story of what really happens is stranger than fiction. Is a stalker behind all of this mayhem? Or did haters send Lexi over the edge?
Hey, so you're the one that called about a missing friend, right?
Her name's Lexi.
Please just get out! I'm calling the police right now!
I mean, she's been going through a hard time.
It's been 12 days since the disappearance of 29-year-old blogger Alexandria Mancini. Theories abound, but authorities are no closer to discovering what actually happened.
Someone didn't like what she was selling.
I just hope that you're out there somewhere.
We miss you.
I hope you come back soon.
I just bought my very first home.
Only that house knows the truth. We can truly see a stunning transformation. Now, some will say this transformation was brought on by stress or by a chemical imbalance, but I believe that this change was brought on by dark forces that converged in the place that was supposed to be her haven.
You can do anything you set your mind to.
The stress of pretending finally got to her.
One of my fans or my friends is playing a prank.
I mean, the more people who know you or know of you, the more people who may want to inflict harm on you. No one just disappears.
There is something unexplainable happening to me.
A truly evil force.
I don't know who to trust.
People need to calm down with all this.
Someone had been watching her without her knowledge.
She was no longer Lexi.
Just help. I don't know what's going on.
I hope she's proud of herself.
And now to my conversation with returning and special guest, actress Victoria Vertuga. Hello, once again, friends and listeners. This is Cincinnati podcast host, actor and writer, Steven Brittingham. Thank you so much for listening. Welcome to season number 5 of Hollywood and Beyond podcast, your home for meaningful and in-depth interviews and conversations. Victoria Vertuga returns to the podcast to discuss her latest film project, Lexi. This impressive achievement is fascinating, well-paced, and combines both dark humor with an emotional edge. My special guest not only directed and co-wrote the script, she also gave an outstanding performance as Laughing Lexi, I'll explain on that later, a motivational social media influencer with good intentions and positive vibes who has gone missing in very mysterious circumstances. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome her back to the show. Victoria, welcome back to Hollywood and Beyond.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be back.
Well, it is wonderful to hear your voice again. I'm so happy to be speaking with you, and I've looked forward to speaking with you about Lexi so very much. So I could not have asked for a more talented, interesting, and fun lady to start season 5 with.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. It's always fun to talk to you. So yay, really excited to be back.
Believe it or not, Victoria, it has been almost precisely 2 years since you last visited the podcast.
That's crazy. That makes sense. A memory just popped up on my Facebook about Disgraced, which is what I was on to talk about before, and it was 2 years ago. So yeah, that's crazy. Time flies, especially in the era of COVID.
Exactly. And I'll tell you what, you made the most of it too with this project. And you are correct. We discussed Disgraced, the series, which was so much fun. I just enjoyed your performance big time. Just so funny and had a lot to say as well. So I'm starting to notice a theme with your projects now that I've seen 2, and you have a lot of smarts with your material and projects. Lexi is so well made. I was so very impressed.
Thank you.
And I tell you what, I briefly described the overall theme of Lexi at the beginning of the episode, but that only scratches the surface. So 2 things up front for you, Victoria.
Yep.
First, congratulations on all that you, cast and crew, achieved with this film. And secondly, how would you best describe the storyline of Lexi to others?
Yeah, so Lexi is about, kind of like you mentioned, a motivational influencer who moves into a new home. Mysterious happenings start going on, and she kind of slowly starts to spiral. So that is kind of the gist of it without giving too much away. a little brief nugget for you.
Yes, this is the kind of topic and storyline that I need to be careful of as a host. I actually always keep that in mind about spoilers, and unless enough time has gone by or it makes sense to go ahead and put everything on the table. But I am trying to make sure I don't spoil any of the ending or too much on my end.
Right, totally. You want to give people an idea of what they're going to be sitting down to watch without giving all the good stuff away.
Wow, I just tell you, I just enjoyed this film so much, despite some, heavy subject matter. I mean, we're dealing with someone who has possibly most likely disappeared, as I described, under very mysterious circumstances. How would you now describe Lexi, your character, to others?
Yeah, so Lexi was interesting because I did a lot of research on kind of bloggers in the space. So she's kind of all about like positive thinking and that kind of stuff, like, you know, how to live your best life, like things like that. So I did a lot of research on people in that space. And I kind of wanted her to I wanted her to be, if this makes sense, a little annoying in the sense that, like, those people who are constantly positive, where you're like, oh my God, you ever have a bad day? Like, you let it go, give it up, you know? But also someone who really was, at the heart of it, kind of trying to do good for people. Like, she wasn't, there's nothing mean or negative or salacious about her, right? Like, she was just very, like, trying to help people live their best lives, trying to give them tips, trying to be positive, and that kind of space. So I really wanted her to occupy that kind of area where she's maybe a little annoying, a little grates on your nerves, but also, like, positive and harmless, and a person that isn't really doing negative. So that we could kind of talk about the schadenfreude that happens when she disappears, and there's that segment of people who are kind of happy that this is happening to her, and finding it all too enjoyable to watch, like, her self-destruction, if this makes sense. So yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Excellent description. Thank you, Victoria. And I wholeheartedly agree, twofold. Not only does the film has a lot of layers to it, but so does your character, Lexi. I have to tell you, with her being a social media influencer, you're right. She's very upbeat and positive, and it's going to be okay no matter what mentality. But I have to tell you, for me personally, Victoria, I found myself, like, realizing that there was a lot of sincerity on her part. I felt that way. I felt like she truly wanted others to feel better. And it wasn't just necessarily all about herself and all of that. She actually thought she was doing good for others.
Yes, and that was the balance that we wanted to strike, right? I did want her to come on a little strong and lay it on a little thick in the beginning, so that, again, to kind of set people up where they maybe find her a little annoying, a little too much, so that, you know, they can delight in her destruction or whatever. But I also did want her to be genuine. You know, this is somebody who is really, like you said, you're trying to connect to people, trying to help people. You know, at her heart of it is trying to do good, and isn't really just about being self-serving, which obviously so much of social media can be. Obviously, there's going to be that component, I think, of anybody in that space where they are going to be a little bit attached to the limelight. You know, you could say that about any of us pursuing a career in front of the camera to some extent. But I did really want her to be sincere and to believe in what she's preaching as much as possible. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it was kind of, it was interesting to find that balance of where that lied, where she wasn't just totally full of crap. You know, she believed what she was selling.
You know, Victoria, I think some of the best folks who undertake, like, self-help advice or coaching, or just doing what your character did, just being out there and trying to influence others, maybe via social media or a website. You know, I think the ones that acknowledge that life can be very challenging and tough, and there can be a lot of difficult times. Yet, here's why trying to be positive and keep going on is meaningful.
Definitely.
I think those are the best ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think that there definitely is a thing I think I would call toxic positivity, which is to deny that there are negative feelings, that bad things happen to good people, that so much of life doesn't make sense, that sometimes things are hard. Like, to just deny that isn't an honest experience of what it means to be human, right? So I definitely think that there are some people who kind of occupy that toxic positivity space where there's, like, a refusal to discuss or admit anything bad or negative. So I didn't want it to be in that realm. You know, I think it's important to acknowledge the reality of life and all its ups and downs, and still be trying to find the silver lining, finding your way out of it, finding your way to make meaning of it from it, and finding a way to do good, you know?
And, you know, sometimes you just have to kind of just do the best that you can and stay within the moment.
Yeah, precisely. Yep.
Well, you know what? Your film, Victoria, some of the descriptions that come to mind is frank, blunt, lots of dark humor that is often so very hysterical. I just can't even stress that enough to anyone listening out there. That's why I can't wait to see it a second time. There's just so many hysterical moments in the film. Yet, as I've also mentioned, there's so many.
I'm so glad you get our humor.
Absolutely. And you know, there's so many emotional and even sad and moving moments at times. And I think it all depends on the perspective of the viewers too.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and that's what the beauty of this being able to write roles for myself is to be able to. What's fun as an actor is to get to go on a journey, right? To have layers and range in your performance and your experience that you happen. And so I love that. Like I thrive in that. So I definitely want the roles that I take and write for myself. I don't get those opportunities often in things I'm cast for. It's very much supporting. It's like I'm the love interest here. I'm the whatever over there. It's very one-dimensional things. So the stuff that I'm creating for myself, I really want to be able to play and have fun and have range. So that is huge for me. And I love in the stuff that I watch for myself and I seek out, I think that darkness and humor go together, right? It's like when you're watching something very heavy that never has any humor, you feel so weighed down. You need a little bit of release. You need that humor to kind of get you back on your track. Like Breaking Bad is one of my favorite shows ever, and I think there's so much dark humor in Breaking Bad. It's hilarious. It's also extremely heavy. So I think that they go together. The best things for me have both. They have the humor and they have that emotional journey and heaviness. I also, like you said, you'll definitely see in my work, I see much more of it. There's themes that come out, and there's things I'm very, there's a lot of satire that happens in my work when I write, whether I mean it to or not, it just comes out. So there's always going to be kind of that dark satirical humor that finds its way into things that I do. That's definitely just very much a part of my POV. But I think that it lends itself well. It allows you the freedom to have that kind of darker emotional stuff with still having a release and being able to laugh at the ludicrousness of it and the ridiculousness of it. Because sometimes life is ridiculous and you got to laugh at it. That's the only way to tackle it.
And I tell you what, this is the kind of film that goes perfectly with some pizza. Order some pizza or get some Chinese food, because it is a journey. I felt that's how I felt. I love films that take me on some sort of journey. And I couldn't wait to get to the end so that I could kind of have my own reaction to how you concluded the storyline. But I have to tell you, the cast is superb, because when it comes to humor, Victoria, as you know, so much of it can be timing and how you present the lines of the character. And they were just so spot on.
They're fantastic. And I've worked with all of those amazing people before. And so I was very lucky and fortunate to be able to work with them again. And when I had the idea for this project, again, we filmed this kind of early COVID when things were still very much locked down and unsure and whatever. And, whatever, there were no vaccines yet, all kinds of stuff. So I wanted to definitely reach out to people who would feel safe working with me again, that we had that shorthand and that relationship with. So all three of them actually were, I believe all three of them were in Disgrace. And I've worked with Susan on multiple projects as well. So the cast, they're just fantastic. And again, this is my at least second time or third time working with them. And so we know how each other works. I knew what their strengths were for the roles. I definitely wrote them with these people in mind, which made it a lot easier. You hear their voices so clearly. So it was really, really great to do. And it was fun to be able to play during this time when nothing was filming and so many things were shut down. To be able to have the opportunity to do what we love in that moment was really, really helpful, I think, for all of us, and people really enjoyed it. And you can see that kind of clearly in the performances.
And the idea first came up because of the lockdown and dealing with the COVID situation. Is that true as far as the idea and writing of the script?
Yeah. So, I mean, like everybody, obviously COVID put a major kink in my plans as far as what I had planned for the rest of the year. So, there was another project that we actually were able to film in October that's in post right now. So that movie was originally going to be what we did next. But obviously with things shutting down, we weren't able to do that. Everything got put on pause. And I don't do well. I always say relaxing isn't relaxing for me. So I'm like a go person. I go to a fault. So having that, everything just paused, I was like, okay, well, I need an outlet. I need to be creative during this time still. I need to do what I love. So what can I do during this time with these limitations that we have? How can I be creative within this little box? And it was a very interesting project because of that. They were not available just because it's COVID. So I was like, what can I come up with as far as a storyline that is very contained, that's mostly going to be me in my house, and how do I make it interesting? So that was kind of the birth of it, is like, with these limitations, what kind of a story can we conceive? And me and my writing partner, Eric, had always kind of been interested in this story. Funny enough, docuseries came out about it during COVID after we were done writing Lexi, but it's the disappearance of the Cecil Hotel. So this girl, Elisa Lamb, happened in about 2013, and she went missing from a hotel. And there's this very famous scene of her, footage of her in the hotel elevator. Very weird, just very weird security footage. And there's something to me that was so compelling about this security camera footage and what you can't see, right? What you're seeing in the frame and also what you're not seeing out of the frame and what our mind does with that. And I was like, it's very interesting that no one has done, to my knowledge, a story using security camera footage only, or just, you know, really utilizing security camera footage. So that was kind of the inkling of the idea. What if we tell a story using security camera footage? There's just something super compelling about that to me. So then we had to come up with a reason, you know, why are we seeing this footage? What is the kind of container that we're putting this story in that makes sense, so that we understand why we're seeing this footage and why it's coming to light? And that's kind of how the whole thing came into creation. So yeah, we wrote and shot and did it during kind of the early part of COVID. My husband was working from home, so I had to film around his schedule with his assistants. And it was a lot of, so it took a long time to film, you know, obviously much longer than it would normally because we were filming it in bits and pieces. And also so much of it was just me in my house experimenting. Do I like that? Do I not? A lot of what was on the script didn't really end up translating, and a lot of what we found wasn't in the script. So it was a very interesting project that way because so much of it was kind of experimental in terms of the gags that you're doing with a Ring camera and like what's working and not working. So yeah, it was a very cool film because I've never quite done anything in this way, and it was very, very unique process. Because we had so many limitations in so many ways, it's kind of an interesting exercise as both a writer and a creator in general, because you have this very narrow box, but in that box, you can be as creative as you want. So it was kind of a cool exercise that way, because we had these very obvious, very serious limitations, but then within those, we can be creative. You know what I mean? So it was very, very cool project to be part of that way. Very interesting creative exercise.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And two things I have to say, I think that is absolutely wonderful that you were able to, you know, undertake a project on this scale. Because one might go, oh, yes, it's COVID. She's going to be by herself a good portion of the time. It's just going to be kind of one of those things. The camera's just there. But I have to say, it goes way, way beyond that. In fact, it took me a while to realize that characters weren't really, you know, there together. Like it's so blended well and nicely together that it took me a while to go, wait a minute, these people are being interviewed separately, and then we've got the security footage and doorbell camera footage. So, I mean, it goes from here to there, and it's kind of got that, you know, those news documentary, like mystery crime shows, 100%. And that's what it feels like.
Yep, like a very true crime. Yeah, and that is definitely intentional. So I will fully admit I am a huge true crime junkie, podcasts, documentaries, all of it. But that's another kind of thing we wanted to layer in there that, you know, maybe some people will pick up on, maybe some won't. But as much as I love true crime, that sounds like a weird thing to say you love, but as much as I consume true crime and enjoy watching it and listening to it, there's an inherent grossness about it. It by its very nature, it's exploitative, right? Because you have people basically making money off of a tragedy that's befallen a person or a family or whatever, you know. So we're using this tragedy that's happened to somebody for our own entertainment, and so there's something inherently kind of gross in that. So we really wanted to kind of layer that in terms of like the experts and you know their books that they've written on this thing, and what, you know, how they're using this thing that's happened to Lexi for their own financial and otherwise gain, to kind of sprinkle the pieces of that in. But I love true crime, and so we definitely, that's kind of the container of making it like a mockumentary true crime series gave us the ability to flesh out the story with these experts and not make it just a straight found footage film. You know what I mean? To make it a little bit of, to be able to like experiment more. So that's kind of the container that we came up with that made sense for us to be able to tell kind of a more fully fleshed out story.
I absolutely love and enjoy researching, for example, Hollywood mysteries. For example, the George Reeves mystery or the Bob Crane murder mystery. And you know what, Victoria? It's very interesting. I usually learn so much just from researching or reading about it or watching a documentary. It's something about the journey of a person and decisions and choices made. whether they made
Yeah.
or others made, and it really leaves an impact on me. So I totally understand being interested in those type of topics for sure.
Yeah, and it's just, I'm just a student of human nature in general, right? I mean,
Yes.
I think all storytellers are. Really, what we're doing when we're telling stories is we're trying to make sense of this experience of being human. We're trying to make sense of what it is to be alive and to live and to do this thing called life. So we use story as a way to make sense of that. These are the rules, and this is what happens, and flaws and overcoming them or not, and comedy and tragedy. It's all just a way to make sense of this human experience. And I think true crime does that as well, right? We're trying to understand things about ourselves and things about others.
Now, did you know in advance while you were writing the script that you also wanted to be the director?
I didn't necessarily, but then, so I usually write with my partner, Eric, who directs a lot of the projects that we do.
Eric
I
Williford.
did direct a couple. Exactly, Eric Williford, yep. And so on Disgrace, he directed some of the episodes. I directed some of the episodes. Our director of photography directed some as well. For the features that we've done, he's directed. But for this, because of the way we had to film it, because so much of it is just me in my house doing everything, it didn't really make sense for anyone else to direct it, because it was so much of it was me doing everything. So it kind of was by necessity, if that makes sense, that I ended up directing it. And it was really funny because so much of it was me doing the footage and, again, doing it piecemeal, as my schedule allowed. So we had this drive where I would put the footage on and then Eric would watch it and we would discuss things and whatever. And he never quite knew when I would, is it going to be today? Is there going to be more footage today? So he would be checking every day and I'd be like, oh, footage is up here. So he would say how it was really hard for him to feel. He felt more disconnected from this, you know what I mean? He's like waiting patiently with bated breath for the footage to pop up. So that was really funny, but I loved it. One thing that was very cool about this is, so a lot of times when you're in a project and you're directing it, it's, as you can imagine, it's a lot of responsibility on your shoulder. And so sometimes your performance can suffer, or sometimes whatever. It's hard to wear all those different hats. The more hats that you're wearing, the more challenging it is. But because of the way that we filmed this with the people, the cast members, on those days with them, everybody it was about a half a day with each person. It was just me and them. So we could just play. It was amazing. It was, once we had the shot set up and whatever, so much of it was just about the performance, which is, I'm obviously an actor turned director. So much of my directing is about the acting and the performance and working with the actors. That's where I really thrive. As I'm still, getting my feet wet with a lot of the technical stuff and the visuals and whatever. So to be able to really work with them in that way played to my skill set and was really an enjoyable process, because it was so much of it was just about that performance. Since the shots are very simple. Once we get it set up, we have, a couple of angles that we're doing in this space. So it was very cool to be able to direct that way. And obviously I'm not in any of those scenes with them, so I don't have to worry about the rest of it. It's just me and them working with them as an actor. So that was a very fun piece to be able to do.
I was so impressed with so many of your shots and angles, when a couple of the characters are authors about the situation of Lexi having disappeared, and just the shots, and then going back to you, and you just did an outstanding job with the direction. And I have to say it again, your performance is a true grand slam, out of the park. There's just no doubt about it. I am very curious though, Victoria, do you find yourself comfortable being in a film that you also, for example, either have the lead or you're a co-star and also directing? Do you find yourself really comfortable with that process?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I love being able to write and act in things, for sure. And then producing happened as a necessity, because when you're working, with a limited budget, the more hats that you can wear and the fewer people you have to pay, the better. And I'm actually I'm type A and I'm super organized. And so I'm really good at those producing things, even though it's not nearly as much fun, obviously, as the creative side of things. And then directing as well. I've always been interested in directing just as a further outlet of storytelling. It's really interesting. The more hats that you wear, the more you realize it's just different sides of the same dice, kind of. You know what I mean? I think every piece that I do makes me better at whatever other piece I'm doing. So writing made me a much better actor. Directing makes me a better writer. And I think people who edit will say that editing makes you a better director, because it teaches you to look at the whole process and the film as a whole. And it just makes you a more informed and I think a more generous and empathetic collaborator. And you know more about everybody's contributions to the process and what the steps are that are needed for everything. So it just makes you better at whatever piece that you end up doing. So I think that that's really awesome. I will say that when you're in a lot of the scenes and you're directing, it's challenging, of course, because it's just, you have to have a really good DP because, you know, you're popping over and you're popping back in and you're popping out. So I think that it's a lot for sure to direct if you're in a major meaty role. I think what I've enjoyed more is to be in a smaller role when I'm directing. Then, you know, if I'm going to direct, like, I would love to be in like a role where it's not the lead in every scene, because to direct and be in so many scenes is a lot of responsibility and just a lot to manage. So I tend to like it when I can focus a little bit more on the directing, and then the acting is a smaller piece of it. Or if I'm going to be in more of it, then I'd rather pass the directing baton to someone else and just worry about, you know, probably I wrote it, probably I'm producing it, and I'm acting it too. So I'll give somebody else one of the other hats to wear, you know?
Well, I feel such a artistic connection with you, Victoria, which you may not even be aware of, because I also have my hand in a lot of artistic cookie jars, so to speak, and I can totally understand the joys and challenges of that. And I'm just so impressed with how you achieve so much with each cookie jar that you are involved with, the writing, the directing. There's something intelligent I also find, despite how zany things can be. I notice in particular a lot of intelligence with how the script takes you somewhere, or lots of surprises, for example, in your scripts. And I just love that. Now, I have to say that, you know, you had such sleek yet natural shots, but I'm wondering that webcam, you know, those scenes with the webcam and the security cameras, the doorbell video footage. Now, how challenging as a director is it to go, okay, we need to make this look interesting for the viewer? I mean, how much did you have to kind of experiment with that?
Yes, that goes back to kind of what I was mentioning earlier about so much of this film was found in the filming of it compared to other things. There was a lot, with the security camera footage, there was a lot of experimenting happening. And there were a lot of things that I wrote, like I mentioned in the script, where we tried to do it. And I was like, oh, you know, it just isn't translating the way that I hoped it would. Let me come up with something else. Back to square one, let's come up with something else to kind of get the same point across, or the same emotional beat that I need. So certainly with the security camera footage, there was a good degree of experimenting. And I definitely wanted, like I mentioned with the Lisa Lamb footage, I wanted it to be about both what you're seeing and what you're not seeing. And I wanted to be cognizant of things coming at you from anywhere in the frame. So I wanted people to, when they see the footage, to be on edge, looking around everywhere, wondering what's going to happen. You know, where's it coming from? What's about to happen? And sometimes we see things and sometimes we don't. And sometimes we're seeing the aftermath of what has happened and not the actual thing. And so that was really fun to kind of mess with and to just consider, you know, the viewer's experience of that.
You definitely had a lot of fun with you know, all these scenarios.
Definitely. It was very interesting. And it's just so funny. There, I guess I should release like outtakes at some point, or like scenes that we didn't go with, whatever.
Oh,
there were so
yes.
many things that we tried
that would be
that were just funny
awesome.
and whatever. Yeah, and some things that we didn't get to or whatever. And also the other thing that was kind of interesting with this film is, without giving too much away, so with the three experts, there's kind of three different very distinct opinions as to what has happened to her. You know, one person is saying they think she's murdered, one person is saying that they think something supernatural happened, and one person is saying that they think she's faking it effectively. So these are kind of our theories that
the so-called friend,
world.
Right?
The
fellow social media maven, and I put this in quotation marks, friend.
Yes, exactly, frenemy for sure. So we had to be careful too with there were some ideas that we had, and we had multiple endings that we filmed as well. We ultimately decided we didn't want to tip the hand, you know, during the process of the film. We didn't want to tip the scales in any one particular direction. You know what I mean? To be like, oh well, obviously it has to be someone murdered her. I see a person right there. Or it has to be something supernatural, because how do you explain this? Or she clearly is faking it because whatever. We didn't want to, you know, show our hand with that. So some of the ideas that we had too were like, I don't know that this can be explained multiple ways. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it was a lot of considerations of that as well, both in addition to like how we're filming it, also like, you know, coming up with an idea and then being like, oh crap, but if we do that, then then this can be the only answer, the only thing that makes sense. So a lot of stuff like that. Very, like I said, very experimental and very interesting that way because, obviously usually when you're filming, you have a schedule and set number of days and these are the scenes that you're filming this day. But because this was like me in my house, so much of it, it was just like, okay, I'm going to mess around with this today. Do I like that? It didn't work. Let's try something else tomorrow.
So that is your home.
Saturday when I have time.
I was thinking that, I think that is your house.
It's so funny because when I sent it to people, the cast, like we had a lot of people contribute those videos, like the theories, like fans and haters and stuff, so that we could open up the world a little bit. So we sent, when the film was completed, we sent it to everybody to be able to watch it. And they're like, oh my God, where'd you get the creepy house? And I'm like, you guys, that's literally my house. It's so,
that's where I live.
During lockdown, during COVID. Yeah, it's so funny. So I'm glad that they find my creepy house creepy. And my friend was like, are you like freaked out by your own house now? Living there? I thought I might be, but honestly, I'm not. And you mentioned, the dark humor. I have a very, I love dark humor. I have a very funny sense of humor. So there were things that people find so creepy that I found so funny filming it, like just scenes that are meant to be creepy that people are rightfully creeped out by, but like during the filming I'm just finding it hilarious. So I was actually surprised that I didn't find it I didn't have a lot of nightmares and I wasn't finding it as creepy as I thought I might filming this, by myself in the dark or whatever. So yeah, fortunately no, I'm still able to live in my house.
Well, that's good to hear because I'll tell you what,
isn't it? Yes.
Having to move away because of this film production would have been a high price. I'm sure you would have considered it, but that would have been a high price to pay. I have to say though, Victoria, I sincerely mean this. There was several gripping moments of suspense where I don't know if saying the horror element sneaks in, maybe for some. I suppose it depends on the atmosphere that the viewer is kind of connecting to, but definitely suspense for sure. And you sit there going, what's going on here? You're trying to imagine different scenarios. And yes, I mean, very suspenseful at times. I would love to ask you about a few of your cast members, which you brought up. But I have to say, it's not just your comedic skills. There are moments in this film where, I just told myself, I'm just going to lay it on the line here, Victoria. I said, there is a talented lady right there.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That was interesting too, because, okay, so as an actor, what made this very challenging is that I literally had nothing and no one to play off of. Nothing.
Yes.
So
just your mind.
It's literally just me. Yeah.
Paranoia.
And because so much of it is delivered in these we used her her vlogs, her video blogs, for her social media. Mm-hmm. I'm delivering it. So we filmed those intentionally on an iPhone so that it would look like a vlog actually looks. So it's me delivering this stuff to this tiny camera. It was just such a very interesting experience. And it was more challenging than I thought it would. It was also because it was COVID and the early days of COVID. And I feel like that was obviously a very strange, surreal, tumultuous time for a lot of us. We were kind of in the fight or flight. I was a little bit more disconnected. I'm usually highly emotionally available as an actor, just in general. That's my whole vibe. But I think I was a little bit shut down, as kind of I think a lot of us were during that time, because there was so much unknown, and you kind of go into an emotional hibernation as you're trying to, wait things out and hope for the best and stay grounded. So that and the fact that, again, it was literally just me with nothing and no one to play off of. It was very challenging. So it took me just a second to kind of find my rhythm with it and relax into it and be like, okay, this is how this is going to feel. This is very different than anything I've ever done before. It feels very different than anything I've ever done before. Mm-hmm. So it did take me a second to kind of find that. And then I was like, okay, now I got this. I get this now. I understand what this is, what this process is. But that was a very interesting challenge as an actor that I didn't really think about when writing it. Obviously I was just thinking about the parameters of what I had available. Mm-hmm. But it was fun. It was a fun challenge a fun puzzle to solve and a fun thing to do as an actor for sure. But thank you very much for kind words. I really appreciate it.
It must have been a release.
Totally.
For you, from COVID. Okay, you know what? I can't really go to too many places. I can't go out to eat in my favorite restaurant. I can't even go to Starbucks probably, or can't go to the store sometimes, under the situation. So, it's kind of I'm just going to let it all hang out.
Yeah, totally. And I'm definitely a person who I need to create, it's a need for me. It is. So to be able to have this outlet during that time was hugely important and really beneficial to me. So,
yes.
yeah.
Victoria, you just, it was a perfect segue to what I was going to bring up before discussing your co-stars and the wonderful cast. And you just nailed it on the head, what I was going to say. And that is, for Lexi and for many others, maybe whatever it is that they really love to do, maybe others don't get it or don't totally understand it. But for Lexi, I mean, doing this is like her whole world. Like it's probably what she thinks about when she's at the grocery store.
Yep.
It's probably what she thinks about when she goes to bed or when she's having coffee in the morning. Like it is so important to her whole sense of well-being.
Yeah.
And I think what your film does is also show the impact and negativity of what we term as haters.
Yes.
That can bring you down. And I'm not talking about people, Victoria, that are saying, well, this isn't for me, or I kind of prefer something else. I mean, everybody has a right to kind of say how they honestly feel, but I'm talking about the mean people, nasty, disrespectful. They want you to feel bad about yourself. They want you to question yourself. And you know what? I think that's what's fascinating about your performance is her meltdown as the film goes along emotionally and within her mind. It has a lot to do with she doesn't want to give up, that she loves doing this.
Yeah.
But things are really wacky right now, and the haters are not helping her.
Yeah, totally. And there it really is. I mean, unfortunately, social media and the internet in general kind of brings out that ugliness because it's really easy to kind of say whatever you want when you have the anonymity. There we go. I can speak big, good words. You know, when you're able to be behind the computer and not in person, things you would never dare to say to someone to their face, it's real easy to say behind a keyboard, you know? So unfortunately, that is kind of one of the ugly pieces that we have with social media and the internet and everything in general. And then I was also kind of interested in what I found to be, we see this a lot with celebrities like Britney Spears or Brittany Murphy or a million girls before them, where the public, there's a really kind of gross, misogynistic, and just otherwise ugly thing that happens where people really delight in the demise or the spiraling or whatever of female, especially celebrities. We love it. People love it. They love to just watch them go crazy and lose their minds and have bad things happen. You know, it's like they have too much and it's not okay. So it's that schadenfreude. It's that ugly piece of humanity that really likes to watch someone get theirs, you know, come down. You have too much. It's too good for you. Like, I want to see you taken off your pedestal. So while Lexi isn't a celebrity in the sense of, you know, obviously like a Britney Spears, you know, she is in the public eye, and the same thing kind of holds true in that way. So we just kind of wanted to explore that piece of it, that kind of ugliness of, not just like, you know, if you don't like something, turn it off, right? Step away. It's not for you. Not everything is for everybody. And that's the beauty of choice in life and art, you know? It means different things to different people.
There you go.
And it's subjective, and that's great. So, but there is that grossness of needing to like take someone down a peg, and you know what I mean? That we see so often. And so we definitely wanted to explore that. Which is why, you know, her being a blogger and in that social media space, being a quote unquote influencer and all that was kind of a fun way to explore that segment of things and that kind of trait of humanity.
It's like a lack of empathy in particular that I notice. I notice on well-established names in the industry, Victoria, I'm sure you do too. It's exactly what you're saying, many of it. And what strikes me as just so upsetting and unfortunate is that sometimes folks will criticize someone, but they'll say, "Oh, I didn't see that movie, but it's gotta be terrible." And they haven't even watched it.
Yes, it's not even an informed decision. Oh, did you watch her stuff? No, I don't know, but you could tell she sucks. It's awful, whatever. Yeah, exactly. It's not even an informed decision.
Yes. Or no acknowledgement that maybe a person worked really, really hard on this project as well.
Absolutely.
And I think that's unfortunate. And your film addresses that. Like, you know, Lexi is really weighed down by all this sudden criticism. I mean, her followers may be going up, but maybe not all the good type of followers.
Absolutely.
And you show these haters and fans throughout the film, just so folks know out there, like you'll cut to some of the fans and supporters, like, we're on your side, Lexi, we believe in you, just hang it. And then others are like, who is this chick? You know, and so you really balance that well, which brings me to your co-stars. Victoria. I am so excited to ask you. So a couple of them are authors, and I love how they have these hilarious titles.
we had way too much fun with that.
Yes, That Ain't Lexi is one of the titles. And that's the lady who thinks that there's some sort of supernatural element. Maybe the house is like a Amityville horror type scenario, or there's some sort of possession.
Yes.
And that lady was so good. That's Susan Louise O'Connor.
Yes.
And what was it like having her in the film?
Susan is fantastic. She, like I mentioned, she was in Disgrace. She was in a pilot I did called Tides. I think I've thrown her into my other projects as well. I know her from acting class, actually, and she's just a fantastic talent. She's so uniquely herself always, with such an amazing point of view on things. And I've known her for years now, so I really know her strengths. And it's really always so fun to write for her, because I just know she's going to nail it. And it's so much fun to play around with her, direct her as an actor. I directed the episode that she was in my web series. We had so much fun with that too. But she's hugely talented and fantastic. I love working with her. She's got such a unique take on things always. So like she played like a cult leader in my pilot, and a weird whacked out therapist in Disgrace. And then in this one, she's, kind of a supernatural expert person, paranormal expert person. So she's just so fun to work with always. I'm always blown away by her.
I really enjoyed her character. I really did. And the gentleman, Thomas Hobson,
yes,
also an author, and his title is Lexi's Last Laugh.
Yes.
I almost feel guilty laughing about this, but that is funny. And like you said earlier, the exploitation of these situations, these titles of these books sound very exploitive to me. Lexi's Last Laugh, because for folks who may not know this yet, when Lexi does her like social media or YouTube video, you hear this laugh of Lexi, like, in the background before we see Lexi. And I think that's where they're getting like this idea for the book.
Correct. Yes, that's like, so when a lot of social media influencers, blogger type people, they will have like their trademark song that they open all their videos with or whatever. So she has this little, little ditty, and then her laugh is part of it, like like at the end of it, that we open all of her videos with, which we also loved to do, because then as her vlogs get weirder and weirder, and she to have the laugh juxtaposed with what comes afterwards was just like very funny to us as well. But yes, we totally wanted to talk about that exploitative nature of it, because you see that with true crime, right? Like there'll be these experts who've written books on this event that happened, or this devastating thing that happened, or whatever, and like they're making a living, exploiting a tragedy to some extent. So it is an interesting component of it. Again, not to throw stones. I am a true crime consumer myself, but there is, we got to admit, there's a little bit of something that it feels kind of inherently gross about it, like I mentioned. So yeah, we had too much fun with the titles of the books. It was amazing.
There was some line, I wish I could think of the actual words, but it was something where he says, and that laugh, for God's sake, doesn't that like say something? When he was describing Lexi's laugh.
Yes.
And I just wanted to share this with you, Victoria. You probably can't really go into too much response for various reasons, but I just want to say, and I don't know if this was intentional, but as a viewer, I labeled that gentleman as a possible twist in the story as a suspect, because I just thought he's the kind of guy that might try to get someone out of the way.
Totally. And we layered some things into, yes, absolutely. We kind of actually wanted to make it so that any of the three of them could potentially be involved themselves. Definitely. And like, there's Easter eggs of like things from her apartment in each of their interviews that people may or may not notice.
Well, Victoria, before we conclude here, I just have to bring up this lady. I mean, she was just so good. I think maybe to me, other than yourself, the most funny, because she's really just not, it's very much a passive aggressive approach.
Yes.
Where she's trying to, I'm her friend. We did videos together. We're social media partners in many ways, so to speak. But you can just see the envy in this lady. And I would like for you to bring up Camille was the character's name. And the lady about her, I just have to say, she just was fantastic.
She's so great. So that's Maya. Maya Zapata. She's also in my web series. It's great. She just naturally is so sarcastic and funny that way. Like, that's her vibe. That is her true essence. And so when you cast her in a role like that, like, I just knew it was, again, I wrote this with like these people in mind to play these parts, and was very fortunate to have this relationship where they would come aboard and do it. So her voice in that kind of role is just so clear to me. It's like so obvious, and I love it. And she's excellent in that. But she's just like, she shines with that, like, I don't even know what she has, that like that acid-laced sarcasm. Do you know what I mean? That like
yes.
Like,
I couldn't wait to see her.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
And it was a nice juxtaposition to Lexi's like perpetual positivity. You know what I mean? So yeah, we had our cast.
Yes. And her perspective of, maybe she cracked because the reality of her actually not being as nice as she's trying to make everybody think.
Yeah.
That was kind of like her mojo was like, you know what? No wonder she cracked. She's not really that nice.
Yeah.
I just thought it was like,
she, like, her, Camille would definitely crack, right? Camille's definitely not that nice. So yeah, it was fun. It was.
And especially with her description of, yes, we know you're nice, Lexi, we know it. Those kind of moments.
So much fun.
I have to ask about your furry friends who appeared in the film as well.
Yes, amazing, so funny.
They did great.
They're fantastic. So, okay, that was a conundrum, right? Because I as people who know me know, I have 3 pit bulls. I help run a pit bull rescue. So I'm filming in my house. I'm like, do I film around my dogs and their stuff that's so obviously in my house? Do I have to like create them all the time and try to film around their various paraphernalia? Or do I just incorporate that into Lexi's character and make her have dogs and make her volunteer? Because that was one place I was allowed to go during COVID, so I could film a little thing at the shelter, So we just decided to incorporate it because it made filming it so much easier. And it's so funny. They were hilarious because they're like, as you might be able to tell, they're the chillest dogs ever. They're so funny. So they would be like mildly confused like the first time we would try a gag, and then the second and third take they wouldn't even react to it. They're just like, whatever. So their reactions are just so funny. And if we wanted any kind of reaction, we had to like make sure we got it in that first take, because otherwise they were like asleep on the couch, not caring at all, which is just funny. So, and there's like a couple funny moments, like my one dog, Butter, she's a tan one. She's like very sensitive girl, and so like sometimes she would be freaked out by like some of the gags and things we're doing, and like some of her reactions.
Yes,
so
I
funny.
Noticed that.
Yeah, so it's just funny. The dogs, I feel like some of my personal favorite moments are like dog related, and it's really funny because one of the people I sent to review it, when we first had the cut, before we wait to go live, was, I guess he's like a huge pit bull lover. So he's like, I just wanted to say I love your dogs. Like, he was like raving about my dogs and how amazing they are. And thank you for like putting pit bulls in a positive light in this movie. And it was so funny because I love that. I was like, this is great. I love it. I found my people, So yeah, my dogs.
And they were reacting to you, like you said, Victoria. They know who you are. They love you. And I think at times when your character was freaked out, like maybe tiptoeing to the bedroom doorway to look in the hall, I noticed like one of the dogs was like, it was kind of like she was saying like, what is wrong with her?
100%. And that is 100%. That is Butters. And yes, she was definitely saying like, what are you doing, Mom? Like, what is going on here?
Now, how can folks view your film,
yes.
Victoria, out there? Hopefully they are intrigued. And I personally recommend viewing it as soon as possible.
Yes. So we are live on Vimeo. We are picked up by Tubi and Amazon Prime, but we're not live just yet. The unfortunate thing about self-distributing is that you don't really have, you don't know when it's going to go. You just know that it is there. So we can be there in any day now, especially on Amazon. But we will be on Amazon and Tubi soon. If you got to watch it now, go ahead and head on over to Vimeo on demand, and you can check it out there. But we'll be on pretty much all the VOD platforms by the fall.
Well, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, Victoria. And I just hope it won't be as long for your next visit down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah. We got another one in post right now, so I'll be back on soon to talk about that.
Yes. I am excited already. Well, thank you once again for joining me, and I'm going to be cheering you on from the sidelines, and I can't wait to see your future projects.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure talking to you as always. I really appreciate the kind words too, and it's so nice to hear that. So thank you so much for having me.
When the sleeping webcam video popped up online, everybody went batshit crazy. And I get it, it's pretty creepy. But I mean, how hard would it be to do something like that yourself and then post the video on YouTube? How long does it actually take to set up another account? 4 minutes, 6 tops? People need to calm down with all this.
Hollywood and Beyond podcast is produced, edited, and hosted by Steven Brittingham. Thank you for listening.